На трибунах аллеют знамена, облака в поднебесье плывут. На зеленом ковре стадиона разноцветные майки цветут.
Hello and welcome back to the RFN podcast. The Premier League returned at the weekend. We're going to start today by taking some time to cover the big events in a red card-strewn set of fixtures. Elsewhere in the world of Russian football, a certain former Dinamo footballer and manager stormed the headlines in what's been referred to as Kobelev Gate, and the FNL has also returned this weekend. As usual, I'm joined by David.
Good evening.
Richard.
Good evening, everybody. How are we all?
And making a long-awaited return after 3 years out from the podcast, Ilya Sokolov.
Hi, what's up?
So Ilya, we'll start with you straight away. As you the resident Lokomotiv Moscow expert, how did you watch their victory over CSKA at the weekend?
Yeah, so I went to the game. I was really happy to come back to the stands. And as usual, there was a great match day at the stadium with the concert and a lot of entertainment stuff. One thing I was really happy about is they finally returned free tea and coffee to the press box. That's what I was expecting, because they.
It's just about to ask how was all the food, and what did you get? Was it just tea and coffee, or did you have the food in the press this time as well?
Yeah, unfortunately, just tea and coffee, but it wasn't limited, and much better than on the previous RPL game this season, because I've got food only on Champions League game, but no tea, no coffee on other RPL games. So it was good, especially in February, because it's hard to survive in the press box without anything like that. I don't want to pay for tea if I go to the press box. So yeah. So I was really happy even before the game. Well, yeah, what I saw on the pitch also entertained me a lot. First of all, as you all might know, Lokomotiv got new tactics. Maybe I don't know. Maybe because of some injuries. Maybe it's just Nikolic thought it would suit Lokomotiv better. But now we play with 4-4-2 diamond, and right now, like Zhemaledinov is Lokomotiv's number 10 instead of Miranchuk, who's probably injured. Besides him, there are Krylia, Mukhin, and Kulikov, and probably Barinov when he's be more like healthy play instead of one of these guys. And also a funny thing that Rybczynski, who was a winger, he's now a right back, and I don't know if any other team in RPL has such a situation because all of our backs are former wingers. Like Matej Rybus was a winger, Lisov was a forward, and Ignatiev, who doesn't play as a back right now, but he's also a winger. So Lokomotiv actually doesn't have defenders, real true defenders on both sides.
So you mentioned privately to myself before the game that you were a little bit worried about Dmitry Rybczynski at right back, thinking that maybe that could be a way that CSKA could expose Lokomotiv on the day. Now, of course, Loko did come out as 2-0 winners, but how did you think Rybczynski did in that position defensively? Was he exposed by Zenutinov and Vlasic and such?
I'm pretty sure that was a plan because Vlasic was put on the left wing, and he played a lot against Rybczynski one-on-one, and he actually succeeded playing against Rybczynski, but the CSKA didn't get anything of it because Vlasic was actually isolated, so that's why I guess CSKA moved him to the center in the second half. And But yeah, sometimes it really did look dangerous. But um, I don't know. Maybe Siske was also afraid of Rybczynski's skills when he comes forward. So they maybe they didn't put so many players in this zone.
Yeah.
That's why it didn't work.
What I really liked about Nikolich's tactics and this kind of new look setup that he's got is just the pace and power that's throughout Loko's team. Now, David, you've mentioned quite a few times that you're surprised that Vitaly Lisakovic doesn't start more often. Were you impressed by his performance and the goal that he took very well?
Well, I think it was a very well taken goal, certainly. I think in general, without seeing the stats, it seemed to me as if Loko, obviously they took an early lead, and it seemed like they then sat off quite heavily. They didn't have a lot of chances after that, and they were looking mainly for the counters. So Lisakovic was quite, I would say, not isolated, but he wasn't involved as much as he could have been. But they just took their shot. Well, they took that one chance and then got another counter attack later on in the half. Took that as well, very very well, obviously from distance with Krykowiak. But it's something we wanted. Obviously, with Eder and Smolov, you're looking at and Zelovic, who are all missing. And even when they are around, they're not necessarily guys who you're going to put in there and defenders are going to be worried about necessarily. But Zakovic has the mobility, which could frighten defenders. And obviously in this particular game, it was Victor Vasin starting for Siska, which is not ideal. And it was Lisakovic who beat him in a duel for the first goal. Had the ball, beat him with a nice little chop inside onto his left foot and fired it in at the near post past Pomazun, who's obviously making his not debut but his first start back to cover Akinfeev, who's obviously out with COVID. But yeah, it was a good performance from Loko. They just did what they needed to do early doors and then defended resolutely. Siska had a very standard Siska performance. I was talking to a guy who happened to watch the game, doesn't watch the Russian league at all, from Scouted, and he just said exactly what we've been observing with Siska a lot. They created a lot of chances, but nothing was actually a clear chance, and they did not take any of the chances. So easy for Loko in the end, really.
Yeah, it was. And Siska have actually got quite a good record in Moscow derbies against both Spartak and Dinamo. They haven't lost against either of those sides since 2019 in the league. But now against Lokomotiv, Siska's record is just absolutely horrendous. It'll probably please Ilya to no end that Loko are now unbeaten in 6 against Siska, having won the last 4 and 5 of those 6 in general. So it's Richard. What's your thoughts from a Siska point of view? Were you a little bit disappointed by Siska's performance, or was it maybe just Loko on the day with a better side, with a better game plan that executed it far stronger?
I think it was a bit of both of those factors, actually. I thought Siska certainly had their chances, but I thought Lokomotiv played well. I love Lisakovic's first goal. Just that touch to set himself up, and then he lashed it home past Pomazun. It was a lovely strike, and I echo David's thoughts. I really want to see him starting more. I really felt that before the winter break, and I'm hopeful that he'll get some more opportunities. And it was nice to see Kamano provide an assist as well for Krychowiak on that second goal, which he absolutely lashed home into the top corner. Pomazun had absolutely no chance with that one. So it was nice to see Kamano show some of the talent that we thought he was going to display in the first half of the season when he came in from Bordeaux. 2 years ago we had a very good reputation in France's Ligue 1, and hopefully he can now start to show that on a consistent basis. The player I was really impressed with was Pablo. I really, really liked him at centre half in central defence. I thought he looked really good, assertive. He cleared up balls. He organised the defence along with Chorluka at the back. And yeah, they kept Siska, marshalled really well. Guillaume actually made a very good save in the second half as well. Very good double save from I think it was from Vasin's header, and then he saved the follow up as well. both really good saves. So I think it was a combination of two things, but it's definitely a good win for Lokomotiv, and good to see youngsters like Mukin and Kulikov get games, and brilliant to see Dmitry Baranov back from his ACL injury at the end, and hopefully he can have eased back into the first team and stay fit, because Russia will definitely need him for the European Championships in the summer, and Lokomotiv will need him too for the running.
Yeah, it was really nice to see Baranov. I think both Kulikov and Mukin have filled in quite well for Baranov, but you could just see the whole place lift when Baranov came on. It was really nice to see, because it's been quite a nasty injury. But Richard, you did mention there that certain Francois Camano had played better, at least, than he has in the first half of the season. Ilya, what are Lokomotiv's fans' thoughts in general maybe about Camano? Is he performing better in a more central role than he did out wide?
Yeah, I can only say what I think about Kamana. I'm pretty sure he's much better up front, like playing as a forward, because when he was playing deeper, he usually held the ball too much, like like Fernandes in his bad days. So I like that he doesn't have time to make decisions. That's why he just scores or pass, and he does pretty well, because his assist to Kryhovic was brilliant. So yeah.
Yeah, it was great. And I think the one last thing I'd like to mention on this game is we had a Hall of Fame banter era thread mentioned possibly for at some point during the game. If anyone hasn't realised, check out the RFN Twitter feed for where Hanu's putting together a banter era thread of essentially the most ridiculous moments in the RPL history. And I think Nikola Vlasic taking a corner and accidentally kicking the corner onto the ball is arguably going to be up there at one point, maybe in the future. But to move on to the next game and staying in Moscow, Richard, how did Dinamo perform this weekend?
Yeah, it was a tale of two halves, actually, with Dinamo's game, I think, against Akhmat in Grozny. First half, I thought they played very, very well indeed. They scored two. I mean, the first goal, looked at it, I think it was a penalty. The Akhmat defender was a little bit unlucky, but it did hit his arm, and given that the way that some of them have been given in the league recently, I think if you're going to give the other ones as a penalty, you're probably going to have to give that one as well. Second goal was scored by Arsene Zakharyan, who, is a player of real promise and potential. He featured on the Guardian's 2020 best 60 young players in the world, and he put in a good display, I thought, at the weekend. Daniel Fomin was my man of the match. I thought he was absolutely brilliant in all aspects of Dinamo's midfield. The second half was a bit sloppy, though, and I noticed this happened early on in the season against Tambov away as well with Dinamo. They started well in the first half, then let the opposition back into the game and conceded a goal when they were 2-0 up and, nearly lost it. They were a bit lucky in the second half that Timofeyev got sent off for Akhmat. I think that quelled Akhmat's momentum a little bit. So yeah, a bit of a tale of two halves, that. But yeah, it was a good first half performance, and nonetheless, even if second half tailed off a touch, which is something they might have to improve on in the future, to get a win away at Akhmat is always, well earned, and always a good scalp, because they're a very hard side to beat away from home. So that was a good win overall. Still aspects of the performance that need tidying up.
Yeah, I agree, Richard. I thought Dinamo were excellent in the first half, and then the second, I think complacency is exactly the right word. They just obviously thought the game was won by then, but I was likewise very impressed by Artem Zakharyan. David, what did you think about the youngster?
Yeah, he did. He did really well. I mean, from what I'd seen of him before, seen and read, because it's hard to find PFL stuff. He had always been playing as a deeper midfielder or a central midfielder, playmaking or bursting from deep. Sort of was like, I don't know, I picture it sort of like an early Aaron Ramsey sort of style. But he was deployed out on the right flank almost, or certainly as an attacking forward. Sort of, I think for a period he was even as a striker. He'd swapped places with Gogniev, it seemed to me. So it was interesting to see him in a more advanced role than what I had seen him before, because I'd never seen him in the bits and glimpses that I've seen. He was always playing deeper. But for a 17-year-old, he looked very confident. And he took the chance well, although it was a bit of a scuffed finish in the end. They had to stretch for it, but he made the chance well. Let's just say that instead for his goal, which he obviously scored, and I think is their second or third youngest scorer of all time for Dinamo. So yeah, very promising. It's great to see a manager in Russia trusting someone this young. Obviously, I think he's the youngest player to start a league game this season in the RPL, and you don't get Russian managers doing that very often. Obviously, last year the only young player who was playing really regularly was Vadim Karpov at that age. So it's nice to see Schwartz come in and do this. He's putting a lot of faith in a lot of the young players there out of the academy. And Zakharyan, obviously, as we know, he's highly rated. He made the Guardian top 60 for this year. So it's nice to see him actually progress rather than sort of sitting stale in the academy like some players that age may well do, particularly in Russia.
Yeah, definitely. It's nice to see Schwartz giving other youngsters as well, like Tukavin, a good go. Now, Tukavin didn't play any minutes in this match the weekend, but there's been quite a few times this season where Schwartz has seen him as his go-to man up front as opposed to Nikolai Komelchenko, who's been absolutely dreadful this season.
Yeah, like versus Spartak, you mean?
So you mentioned Spartak. David, I'll come straight back to you. I guess you enjoyed the Rubin win over the weekend?
Oh, very much. Very, very much. It was... I was worried, I'll be honest, because Quincy's record against Rubin the first time around, during his first spell in Russia, was horrendously good. So I was just thinking the wave that Spartak were going to be riding on was just going to knock us over, despite how well we would be playing over the winter break. But we went out there and Rubin played a very, very good game. They deployed their tactics well. They knew they weren't going to be controlling the ball during the game. They sat off. They pressed well, like they've been doing all through the winter break. That was the one thing I noticed during winter breaks. These players, particularly the front three, were pressing very high and very aggressively. And yeah, they executed the chances really well. Kvitcha was a nightmare again, picking up, winning fouls, getting yellow cards. Makarov obviously earned a couple of yellow cards for his team as well. Referee was a bit suspicious with some of the bookings for both sides. Begic, I know, got booked very, very, and it was, it wasn't a card, and there was certainly one for Spartak. I think it was Ponce, I want to say, got a booking at one point, which was a bit sketchy. And then Abulgar's second yellow in the second half was also sketchy. But the whole Rubin team were excellent. Samoshnikov, Kvitcha, Despot, Abulgar, Shatov, Begic, Uremich. They all had a great game. And it was so good to watch. Like I must have watched the highlights back like 2 or 3 times just because I can believe how well Rubin had played and just how average Spartak were. Obviously, they had a man sent off just before half time, but even before that, it wasn't particularly sort of a great performance. I must admit, when we had the man sent off, the energy in the stadium really lifted, and I was thinking, oh God, here we go. Spartak will score now. The crowd were right behind the team. They did score, but it was obviously offside off the corner. And then as they kept pushing forward, they lost the ball sloppily. And we scored again late on. Despot obviously with a brace in the end. So yeah, I was very happy, very, very happy with the performance. Less happy with the ref, obviously, because it's cost us a few players for this week's game against Zenit. I think Abulgar, Shatov, and Aremevich were all suspended for the game against Zenit, which three big losses to a squad that's already thin because of injuries. So not ideal, but I'll take the win certainly.
Yeah, I was going to mention the referee next. Now, there's been quite a long dispute on social media channels regarding the referee and his proclivity for giving out what was essentially soft yellow cards. Both of the reds were converted double yellow cards. What did you think of Zobnin and Abdulgor's respective reds? Now, personally, I didn't complain too much about Zobnin's second one. It's a hard tackle, but he's quite late. The first one I didn't think was a yellow at all, but Abdulgor's was pretty scandalous. But
it wasn't good. Now, I think the first one for Zobnin was more the fact that it was the second time he'd done it. There was an obviously you mentioned to me before that you'd missed the first half. There was an incident earlier in the game where Zobnin had brought down Krylia on a counter and the ref hadn't booked him. So when he took Krylia down for the first yellow card that he got, you could see Krylia holding up his hand to the ref saying, "Look, this is the second time," and he books him after that one. And I think that was probably why he got that yellow, even though it was a soft foul, but it was the second cynical-ish foul that he'd done to sort of stop a counter. And then the second one, obviously, he's just booted Makarov in the leg. Makarov just spun him. Zobnin's gone to hack the ball away and just smashed him in the leg. It was, on the replay, it looked really quite bad because you see his leg bend and you're thinking, oh God, that was almost a leg breaker. His leg had planted because his leg really did bend. But yeah, Abu Ghul, I mean, the second yellow, I can't even remember what his first yellow was for, I must admit. The second one, he goes in from behind on Sobolev, which I presume is the only reason, basically, the yellow's given, because he wins the ball between his legs, but maybe gives him a dead leg or something. I don't know. The ref, it seemed a very harsh yellow to most people concerned. Obviously, because it's second yellow, we can't even appeal it, which is a shame because obviously Abu Ghul's been one of the best players in the league this season.
Yeah, he has been. I mean, he's in our RFN team of the autumn as well, and fully deserved. Now, you mentioned Promes for a little bit. I did say this before the podcast and recording, but I'll mention again that I think Promes's performance really reminded me of when he first arrived in Russia from all those years ago, 6-7 years ago now, where he really saw quite a lot of the ball, but wasn't quite as electric as he saw later on as he developed his career, as he got used to the pace of the game and so on. But this is a man who has been embroiled in quite a lot of controversy of late and essentially hasn't played any form of football, competitive football, at least in months. So I think Spartak's excitement maybe got ahead of themselves a little bit. They put their heart before their head and thought, oh yes, Promes is back. He's going to light the league up. Now, I have no doubt in terms of ability, Promes probably will, but it'll definitely take him quite a little bit of time to get back into the swing of things after so long of not playing at all. Ilya, I'll come to yourself in a second because I know you're a massive fan of a certain little Georgian winger, a diminutive Georgian winger who, very, very excited, big fan of, I think, and his betrayal of Lokomotiv to go to Rubin.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have to admit he was good at this particular game because, usually I was like, when I was talking about Kvaratskhelia, I mentioned that he's a brilliant dribbler, but how many assists does he get? Like, can he actually score a goal? But this game with this assist he made, I mean that decision was like really that was not Kvaratskhelia decision. Actually, I don't know if he can repeat that in other games, but if he can, maybe he actually costs like a couple of million, and Rubin can actually make some profit of signing him. But we'll see. But unfortunately, he's kind of playing better right now than he did in the previous game. So
yeah, I knew as soon as I went on record in the Team of the Autumn podcast of when we debated Khvicha or Lisavoy or who won the wing and Kabela, and it ended up being Lisavoy and Kabela. And I knew as soon as I went on the record of saying Khvicha needs to up his game in terms of final decision making and end product, that the next time you would play Spartak, you'd absolutely wipe the floor with every single Spartak defender. So a little bit of sod's law there, but I mean, Khvicha wasn't just the single reason of why Rubin won. Rubin, from the very front to the back, were excellent all over the park. They got in Spartak's faces, really pressed quite high. Khvicha himself is just an absolute monster to try and get off the ball. And when people get in Spartak's face like that, Spartak really don't like that, especially when they play at home. They really dislike getting rattled. And that's when you see so many players and the manager Tedesco himself kind of lose their cool a little bit. That's when the real glass cannon comes out, because Spartak on the day could play among some of the best football in the league. But Rubin and Slutsky knew exactly what to do, just to press Spartak and Tedesco's buttons, or even though Tedesco wasn't on the sideline serving a touchline ban. But Rubin absolutely stopped Spartak in everything that they tried to do. But I'll leave on Spartak with one little extra bit of information, and that is that, of course, former sporting director Shamil Gazizov left Spartak under quite a large cloud in the first part of the season. Now, two of the men who replaced him, Yevgeny Melzhikov and the managing director and the sports director Dmitry Popov, have actually revealed on Champion that some of the insight into the Gazizov debacle. Now, Melzhikov explained that at some point, Shamil understood that he couldn't handle the workload and the functions that perhaps weren't really defined when he got the job. He wanted to make decisions in the sporting department, but when he faced tasks such as handling the club work and infrastructure, commercial activity, FFP compliance, he didn't delegate them to anybody but did nothing himself. There were certain complaints about him. He considered himself the sole executive party and behaved too independently. When asked what that meant, he continued that Gazizov thought he didn't have to listen to the stakeholders and the board in certain costly matters. Asked about transfers, he said yes, both transfer sums and player choice. He thought that he could make all these decisions on his own. That was just quite an interesting insight into maybe the way, not just, I mean, he's obviously disparaging Gazizov and kind of trying to make a little bit of a joke figure out of Gazizov, but I think it's a little bit of a disparage to Gazizov in that sense, but I think it's more so actually towards Fedun in that Gazizov was put into his place without a clearly defined role beforehand. Why is he finding out in the role that this is his job? And then afterwards, after Gazizov, the non-Spartak man, is taken out, then they do have a separate managing director for the finance on one side, sporting director for sports alone on the other. Melezhikov took over the commercial activity, the FFP compliance. Popov took over the actual football side of the job. So why didn't Fedun have this outlined in the first place? But it also just does outline the complete and utter difference between how and what it takes to be successful and to operate at Ufa with their budget and the size of the club compared to Spartak, and just how different these two clubs are. David, do you think that there's much to really read into this regarding Gazizov himself, or is this just maybe how the nature of football works?
It's probably a bit of both. I mean, Ufa, a smaller club like Ufa, Gazizov probably was used to having a lot of power, a lot of control, which obviously not ideal necessarily, but he was doing a very good job. So who's to question it? Ultimately, it sounds like maybe at Spartak he wasn't getting all the control he was used to or expected. Plus, also it sounds, like maybe he wasn't briefed properly about what they were expecting of him. It's a bit of both then from him, Well, he wasn't expected, but then when he found out, he didn't try, apparently, if we're to believe Melzhikov. So who knows? It looks like Gazizov's back at Ufa now. So let's just put that chapter behind him, and we know he can be, a great sporting director or great director of football, whatever his role is. So let's hope he can do that with Ufa again, because they had some very good years under him before.
Yeah, and to segue back to the actual real events of the weekend in the football, Ufa themselves lost against Khimki 2-1 away to Khimki, and Uranov made his first return to Ufa. David, how do you think Ufa did? You caught the game, didn't you?
It was a poor game, really. It was a nothing first half, and then the goal early second half from Khimki really just sort of killed the game off. But Ufa really had just not done a great deal during the match, which was a shame. I never really felt like they were going to get a real chance of scoring. Obviously, they did get one late from a set piece. So yeah, that wasn't great. But they were much better in the cup. They played in the cup midweek against Ural, their postponed game. Obviously, we talked about that last week, and they won 3-0 in that game. They were much better. It was a slightly rotated team. Arunov started that game, and he was pretty good from what I saw. He had some of those flashes of brilliance that we know he can get. Where he darts past a couple of players, but Andrich and Zhemaletdinov were very good in the midweek. So maybe it's just some gelling time and time to get the best lineup together. Obviously, Ufa made a couple of signings late in the window there with Arunov and a couple of the guys, Bizoza and Miletic. So they got Ural again this weekend away rather than at home. So I'm hoping they can take what they did midweek and get another victory, because they need the points down there at the bottom to try and stay up.
I was really surprised to hear that when David mentioned the match against Ural, that was the 3-0 win in the Russian Cup game for everyone. It was the rearranged fixture from a couple of weeks ago. I was really surprised to see Zhemaletdinov get those 2 goals, because I thought, aside from that one finish early on in the season, was it against Dinamo?
Tambov, he scored a couple of belters against Tambov, I recall.
I remember one where it was like kind of a little bit like the Javier Hernandez goal that time.
Oh, the backwards header.
Backwards header, yeah. It was a lovely finish.
I remember that. He scored 2 belters against Tambov, a free kick and a long shot off a corner routine, I remember. 2 excellent goals there. So with that Bracey's bag this week, again, there was another excellent goal in there against Ural midweek. Basically lobbed the keeper with a volley from outside the box. It was really nice, and they were very good.
It's a bit of a weird player for me, because he either doesn't perform whatsoever or is an absolute bagsman sticking at top ends.
Like a Polish journalist contacted me in the week, asking, he'd seen that he'd scored twice, and he was like, "What's going on?" Because he played for 18 months in Poland, and he only scored once. He was nothing. And I remember from his spell when he was at Siska as a youngster, he had like one of the lowest dribble rates of any striker in the league. Like he would take under less than 1 dribble per game. Just was not mobile. And now you watch him, like playing for Ufa, we know Ufa strikers have got to be mobile, they've got to be pressing, they've got to chase the ball on. And he does all of that now. It's really weird to see him as such a different style of player to what he was maybe 4 years ago. And I was thinking, I know that when he was in Poland, he was often played not as a striker, maybe behind, or as a winger occasionally. And maybe just needs the motivation and getting a starting performance every week for Ufa up front in the position he wants, granted in a tough role where he's got to do a lot of running and stuff. Maybe it's just working for him. It doesn't work every week, and we know Ufa are never going to have real prolific goal scorers because that's just how they play. They're more of a team who are going to go out there and try and win 1 or 2-0. So yeah, but I think they've got a nice partnership there. Him and Andrich and Merzlak, the guy Croatian who joined late in the summer window. He was really good. He was really, really good. So they've got a nice like link of players there starting to sort of come well. Maybe a bit late in the season, but I'd like to think they'll at least avoid the bottom 2 this season now.
One thing that always impresses me about Ufa is it's not just Gazizov. Gazizov has got a lot of credit for the work he did there over the years, and rightfully so. But the scouting department as well. Now, Ufa's style may not please the eye. I personally hate watching any game with Ufa in, because you know what you're going to get. It'll be one team camped on the edge on Ufa's half and just trying to constantly break them down, having all these shots at goal when Alexander Belanov just turns into Superman again and decides to stop everything. And that obviously didn't work a lot this season. But to be fair to Ufa, their scouts are really good at signing and identifying players who fit into their philosophy. They don't need a ball-playing defender. The only one of late is really probably Nedelchiaru. Every single other defender they've had, they rely upon very high concentration levels, keen positioning, because they're going to be defending for so long, backs against the wall. Austin Uranov is just a typical example of somebody who would go Ufa and thrive. He is probably one of the best in the league at driving from deep with the ball at foot, probably only better by Kvisha, and pulling Ufa literally 30, 40 yards up the pitch. That's what he did that when he came on against Khimki to great effect. He didn't have the best of games, but that one thing that he does so well is purely just he uses his low center of gravity, his close touch, and his keen technical ability, and just gets Ufa up. It's very much like what Dmitry Stotsky's role did for Ufa as well, where his own close control and solid technical ability on the ball would get Ufa up. Zhemaletdinov is similar. They've identified that he could fit into that role of what like Sly used to do. But yeah, Zhamaletunov's not particularly had a great season in my opinion. He like I say, he does score the odd banger, but he just fits Ufa's system really, really well. Richard, you caught an eye over the Sochi win at the weekend as they ended up having an absolute rout and winning 4-0. So how do you think that how they done down in the south and the Black Sea club done at the weekend?
It was a very impressive performance from them. First half, they were the better side, but just couldn't break through. They had, I think, a Christian Naboa goal ruled out for offside. But then the second half, they were absolutely outstanding. What I really like about Sochi is under Vladimir Fedotov is they're playing a very high pressing style and quick transition between the lines. And it's a style which is quite associated with German Bundesliga clubs. I've watched the odd Bundesliga game, and it's definitely high pressing, winning the ball back and creating quick goal scoring opportunities, and that's what they did. And Zaika put a lovely ball through for Zabolotny to score the opening goal. There was a brilliant free kick from Joãozinho, and I think and Yusupov scored a lovely goal as well to make it 4-0. And I think we've got to give a lot of credit to Vladimir Fedotov because he kept Orenburg in the RPL. And then halfway through last year, he was appointed as Sochi's new manager. And not only did he keep them in the RPL in the end relatively comfortably, but he's looking at building now, a really good side down there. And what's really impressive about it too is he's getting the most out of players who, have not previously been highly thought of, and also got released from their clubs in the summer. Joãozinho and Yusupov got let go by Dinamo. He's got getting goals out of Zabolotny. The back three are very solid. Naboa's playing some of the best football around, even still at the age of 35. So yeah, I think we've got to take our hat off to Vladimir Fedotov for the job that he's doing down there. And they've got Rostov at the weekend. They keep stringing together a few more wins, then you just never know. This could get quite interesting.
Now there is a little bit of an interesting story regarding Sochi in that they might not actually be able to play in Europe if they do finish in the European positions. Basically, any club that has existed for less than 3 years, like Sochi have to apply to be included in Europe. They're not automatically in the pot for the playoffs or for whatever, depending on position. Now, 95% of clubs do actually get granted this, so it looks like a good chance that they will. But there has been instances in the past where football clubs haven't been granted it because the move and the recreation of the club was purely for financial purposes, like Sochi's was. Because let's not forget, yes, Sochi are doing very well this season, led by a talented manager with a talented squad, but they are essentially still a fake club that were in which a historic one, Dinamo St. Petersburg, were moved across the country and rebranded by Boris Rotenberg. So there's definitely want to keep an eye out on towards the end of the season if Sochi do keep up their good form and finish in a European spot. So we're going to quickly skip now and we're going to drop down a division. We're going to do the Krylia special and we're going to move into the FNL. We're going to try and, like I said last week, cover a lot more FNL in this half of the season because we sometimes criminally forget about our little brothers in the league below. And the big game of the weekend was Krylia Sovietov actually defeated Nizhny Novgorod at the top of the table clash. Now, David, like myself, we both had both of these games on first thing on Saturday lunchtime, Saturday morning, with the Khimki Ufa on, and then the Krylia Nizhny on another TV. Then I had Spartak 2 on another one. But how did Krylia look in the game? I think they're the real title contenders right now, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, the squad they've got is just outrageous. I think it was you who messaged the chat, just saying about the bench they had for the day. And that was even without, I don't even think Ricardo Alves made the squad for the game, and they just signed him as well. And we know how good he can be. From what I saw of the game, obviously I was trying to focus on multiple. Initially didn't seem to offer a lot from what I saw. But then neither did Krylia either. It seemed to be a game that's got stuck in the midfield. But they kept whittling away, and they got their goal in the end. A nice finish from Yezhov, who's not had the best season since his move from Chertanova. Played a lot of games, but has not had many goal contributions at all in terms of goals and assists. I think that was only maybe his second or third goal this season, which isn't a great number for someone who's been playing so regularly. But as we know, so many of Krylia's goals have come from Sergeyev and Galenkov. They've got like 31 between them, which is over half their goals. So, a big win puts them top. Though they are still level on points with Nizhny. But the two teams below them both dropped points. So big win. Those two teams are now 4 points clear. And you really fancy Krylia just to keep on. There's only 11 games left. You fancy them you'd even fancy them to win all 11. To be honest, like the squad that they've got, they probably should be winning all 11. It's such a good and competitive squad, and obviously we saw them destroy Khimki in the cup a couple of weeks ago. I forget who they've got in the draw next round. I think it's even a potentially winnable draw they got as well. I can't recall.
It was Dinamo.
Dinamo. See, it all depends what Dinamo. If that Dinamo who from the second half against Zakharyan turn up, then who knows what's going to happen in that game. So it's nice to see them probably be coming back up because they're a well supported club and they've got a nice World Cup stadium and a nice squad. It'll be great to see the Chertanovo graduates give it a go in the Premier League. Well, we're waiting for them so long to make that step up. Although Zinkovsky, a day after the transfer window ended, said, "I think I am ready to go abroad now." So that was good timing from his part. Could have said it a week earlier. But, so he might well be off, which I think we'd all be for him to go. But it was a solid win for them.
Sorry, I'm trying to control myself. That's ridiculous. Anton Zinkovsky, you need to sack your agent and find you a new one. If you're saying things like that the day after the bloody transfer window closes. Now, up top for Nizhny, there's been probably one man, the star man for them this season is Timur Suleimanov. He's a 20-year-old on loan from a certain Lokomotiv. Ilya, are you excited about Suleimanov? Do you think he could perhaps return to Loko and maybe make the first team? Because we all know that Loko's strikers are perennially absolutely horrendous.
Yeah, I really hope so because this summer we lose Eder, who was definitely our best striker, and oh, come on,
sorry.
Come on, what do you mean? Yes, and also Lisakovic is great, but sometimes he has really bad games. Just for example, against Tambov, I don't think he was on the pitch, although he was in the squad, but he was like the worst Lokomotiv player, and it was against Tambov, which is not a good sign at all. And Kamano, he's great right now, but we can't be so sure about him. So Suleimanov actually played several games for Lokomotiv, but he even almost scored in one game. It was offside or handball, so goal was
missed from like 2 yards out in a game recently, if I remember rightly. I remember someone it was like this guy's good. Can everyone listen? And he's been really good for Nizhny this season, really good as a target man as well. But I vaguely remember in one of the RPL games, there was like a ball knocked down and it was like squared across the 6-yard line and Suleimanov missed from like 2 or 3 yards out. It was like one of the worst misses you'll ever see. But he's, like I said, that's just him learning from the best in a day. That experienced striker up top, his knowledge rubbing off on Suleimanov. No, sorry, I shouldn't laugh too much. I mean, look, I'm a bloody Spartak fan at the end of the day. It's the biggest crazy house in Russian football. But I thought he was actually quite quiet in the game against Krylia, and that was one of the reasons why Nizhny themselves struggled. They really, I mean, even though they were at home, they really just were pegged back completely by Krylia, and Ivan Sergeyev was just excellent, and he was closing down everything that Nizhny even tried. Richard, I believe there was a fight in the Alania match, if you caught that at all.
Yes, I did. I did hear about this. I saw it on Twitter. I haven't researched much into it, but I don't know whether any of you guys have seen it. I didn't actually. I've heard about it on Twitter. I didn't actually see much of it.
I've seen, if you want me to. So
Sorry, yeah, I haven't seen much of it.
it was right at the end of the game. Alania just conceded a 95th minute goal to lose 3-2 against Tom Tomsk, and then something kicked off in the centre circle between Rozanov and one of the Tomsk players. Words were said, arms were thrown, and it basically caused like a brawl in the centre of the pitch. And the first reports that came out were that the Alania coach Spartak Gogniev, who also ex-Siska, ex-Ural as well, scored a lot of goals in the Premier League. The early reports were that he'd punched the assistant referee in the stomach, but I'm not sure if that was actually. I think he's been charged with. I think the words that I read were aggressive pushing. I don't know if that's quite right, but I'm pretty sure they've said he just pushed someone now. And I think he's banned for 8 matches. I don't know if that's just a touchline ban or a full ban, but he's banned for 8 matches and Khosonov for 4. So, not an ideal situation there. Temperatures rising there with the late defeat. I think they were already down to 10 men, which is how Tom Tomsk managed to turn it around, considering how dire they've been. That was our one moment of madness in the FNL this week.
Speaking of Spartak Gogniev, I mean, apart from the meme that was going around on VK at the weekend, that just a lot of people who had seen Spartak Gogniev in the headlines didn't realize he was a player and not a team, which I thought was quite funny. But my long abiding memory of Spartak Gogniev is years ago when he was Krasnodar captain. Krasnodar were playing away at Terek at the time, and he was sent off. And when he was like walking off the pitch to go down the tunnel, 2 Terek fans just kind of ran out from the stand and just decided to like start punching him, literally punching him. And Gogniev went wild, and like he went into the tunnel and then just got like dragged away by police. And then apparently, I can't remember this, but I read about this earlier because I vaguely remembered it. And apparently, the police started beating Gogniev as well. So like this, he's known for some of the more bizarre moments in Russian football, should we say, without going really any further into it. But yeah, if people find that, because there's quite a few images of it and videos of it around. I think I've seen it last on VK. It was of the Krasnodar Terek game, and when it was Gogniev who was hit then, and he's again straight back into the limelight. Chayka beat Shinnik 5-1 as they finally showed a little bit of promise that you were hoping for from them this season, David, as well.
Yeah, it was caught the highlights for that one. Didn't see that game live, but they've got a nice front four there with Maiev, Kulishev, who was once the autumn top scorer in the FNL for Dinamo St. Petersburg a few years ago, and then moved to Orenburg, and it didn't really click for him. But we know, therefore, that he can score goals at this level, and they've been crying out for a striker. Although he's still playing as one of the attacking trio behind Umayev up front, who's, I think, now at 5 goals in 11 games since he signed with Chayka on loan, and also picked up assists this week. And then the 2 Olenikov and Alenikov, who've come in from Shinnik over the last 6 months, they were both looking excellent as well. And then the former Ural right back, do you remember Vladimir Kozhin, who was once pretty respectable right back. He's now the Chayka captain, playing centre half, and he scored twice. And he's becoming quite notorious, I've noticed, from what I catch of the FNL, of scoring belters. And he scored a free kick from about 30 yards, which rifled in. And it's not the first time I've seen him do something like that either. So he's sort of making a bit of a name for himself. It's sort of a bit of a Chayka icon down there. But yeah, really good win. Obviously, Shinnik are just dreadful. They're bound for relegation. I was chatting to an agent over the weekend, and he was just lambasting their recruitment. It's just a mishmash of players who have come in to replace the couple of losses that they made. Alenikov going to Chayka. Not good. So yeah, it's a shame. Obviously, I think we mentioned before, it'll be their first relegation to the 3rd tier ever. But it looks a foregone conclusion at this point now.
Yeah, it is a shame. It's a shame to see just how far they've fallen. But it's not too surprising, like I said, with the summer recruitment that was so poor. Another side who actually have had one big player taken away, and that was Volgar Astrakhan. Of course, their former top scorer Dmitry Vorobyev went to Orenburg in the winter, so I wanted to keep in my now what will be 3 weekly changing of FNL teams because Spartak 2 were boring and shouldn't exist. I watched Volgar Astrakhan at the weekend, and I was quite excited about their who they brought in because they brought in Gamid Agalarov, and I was like, oh, Agalarov should look quite good, and he came off the bench and scored as well as the star man up top now who took over in Artem Pogasov, but Volgar looked really good. They won 4-1 away to Yense, so not the most difficult of matches. The leapfrogged Yense in the race for like the top half, just behind Velez and Alania and all those. But it looks like they're just going to sit mid-table. They're not really going to move anywhere too high or too low with the points that they're on. But definitely want to keep an eye out for us because they've got quite an eclectic forward line of Alexei Gasolin, Yusupov, Pogasov, and now Gamid Agalarov. So it's like a ex-RPL promising youngsters mercenaries bunch. But David, is anybody else you would like to highlight before we move on to the next topic from the FNL this weekend?
Akron grabbed a late equaliser at Velez. They picked up, I think we mentioned it in the previous pod, they picked up some really nice players with a lot of experience. Nikita Chicherin was one who came in late doors to shore up the defence, and they've got a nice few players in that squad now with lots of Premier League experience. Maxim Mirovic as well. So I was glad to see them carry on with their decent form that I'd seen them have over the winter break and pick up a draw away at Velez, and I'm hoping they can climb out the relegation zone. It's still 7 points to close the gap on Irtish, who are currently in 16th. But it was a nice move. Obviously, Velez trying to rebuild after losing Maksimenko, but it was nice to see Akron potentially start climbing back up the table.
Ilya, anything to add on the FNL? We know that you're not the biggest FNL fan in the world.
No, I just wanted to come back to RPL for a second. I want to say respect to the CSK tactician Evgeny Shevelev, who had a Twitter thread after the game against Lokomotiv, and he explained how CSK played against Lokomotiv and pointed out all the mistakes made by CSK and his view of the game and the chances they had and why they didn't realize that. That's a really rare thing for Russian football, so I think it's worth mentioning it. I hope there will be more of the same.
Yeah, that's nice to see. If you send me that privately, Ilya, I'll retweet that off the Russian Football News Twitter just so people can go and have a look, because there's been recently in some of the media and some Twitter forums, there's been a little bit of a resurgence of actually useful Twitter threads amongst Russian football as opposed to just memes, which is generally what Russian football has been, like the old log memes, the Sponaya and so on. David, you mentioned Artem Maksimenko. How did he play for Ural at the weekend?
Well, him and Gadjim Muradov, who I really liked in the first half of the FNL, and even last year, Gadjim Muradov as well. Neither of them got a start in the first game over the weekend, and then they didn't have much to do in their cameos. I think they both got off the bench, and I remember we were watching. I can't even remember who they played, but we were watching the game, and because I remember posting in the chat about just how much I liked Maksimenko's running style. He's a big burly guy, but he's got this really. And I know it reminds me of someone, but I just can't think of who it's reminding me of. The way he runs with the ball. But it always just makes him seem like a really dangerous player. But yeah, neither of them had much to do or couldn't really do much in the first game. Gadjim Muradov started in the cup against Dufa, obviously, which they lost 3-0. I saw him have a couple of nice little flashes. And then Maksimenko came off the bench again, but again was not really involved a great deal. Ural was struggling for a while there. So I'm hoping they'll both get an actual league start. What was the point of signing if you're going to keep playing Pogrebniak and whoever else in that front three? It would be nice to see Maksimenko get a start there.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like. I think I mentioned when we were discussing that I think he's got a surprisingly, and to be honest, it's quite bizarre to watch how low it is, but a surprisingly low center of gravity for such a big guy because you, like you said, you don't really see that ability just to stick hold of the ball and to like really weigh himself down on the pitch. So it's very bizarre, but you can see why he's very highly rated, and I hope he does make the step up quite nicely to the RPL because he's one I know that you've kept an eye out on for quite some time. So we're going to move on to the last topic now, and this is really something that blew up on Monday, Tuesday, and it is some comments from the former Dinamo man. Now, Andrei Kobelev, he's a well known for on a football hate YouTube channel, and he essentially had some very sexist and quite difficult remarks. Ilya, would you like to walk through some of what went on with Kobelev, the former Dinamo manager and players' comments?
Yeah, like he said several really sexist things, like that women can't understand football, and he also said that something like, if I get a call from a female reporter, I ask to call male, like, or I ask them, don't you have like male reporters? So comments were like that. Like there is no doubt they're sexist, but as for me, I wasn't really surprised when I heard that because Kobelev, he's kind of, first he's a former coach, but he was like out of context for several years, and he actually, like, I remember the comments from Dinamo players when he coached them and when they went down to FNL. He said something like, in the training camps, we were just running around the pitch. That was our training for several days, and I think that Kobelev doesn't understand like anything in this world. Not like about male and female reporters, but like how to coach and how to do something. So I was really surprised, and I'm surprised that people really care about his opinion right now as an expert. Like he's kind of, I don't know, an easy expert for any football reporter because you always have Koblev's number. He'll always answer you something you probably need to write about this game. Nothing about tactics, nothing particular, but some comments will make you clicks. Yeah, but
yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, he mentioned in his comments Maria Ozil, who's a columnist, a Dinamo fan and columnist, and she's been quite critical of him in the past and his management. Totally fair. I mean, he got them relegated to the FNL for the first time in the entire history. Now, in this interview, the guys who were talking to him kind of baited him a little bit, saying some things that traditionally sexist people would believe, like saying, like, well, this is straight sexism. You can't say this. This is wrong. And I thought they did quite well to basically highlight it and bait him to do it more, really get to the crux of what his beliefs are. And Maria also responded to his comments, and I like how she mentioned that this is not the opinion of the majority of people, but it's basically just she attacks him for these and says that she cannot understand why football is exclusively male territory. Why in Europe on football programs and the sidelines and locker rooms are the female journalists working in these situations. It basically she actually went on to further it and take his comments, which are wrong, disgusting, and completely incorrect in every single form of the word, and she took them, and instead of just attacking him back, which would get her nowhere and the argument nowhere because it would just be pointless, she basically turned it around and said, look, this guy, he's got horrendous views, but a lot of these views are actually bigger of a larger problem in society, not just in Russia, but in football as a whole, the entirety of football. And she's absolutely bang on. How many women do you see on football across the world in analytical roles on television? The only one I can think of is one on English TV. Otherwise, they either in analytical roles purely on women's football and not men's football, or they are the presenter or the touchline reporter. There's that meme going viral of Winston McKennie staring at the woman on the side of the pitch. Like they all have the similar roles, and I thought her response was absolutely brilliant in that she just took it, made him look like an idiot even more than he already is, and then just completely turned it around as to be like, look, this isn't this is a viewpoint of a minimum amount of men, but it's that viewpoint is there because of this, and this, and she just basically dismantled every single thing he said. And what's evolved after that is an interesting Twitter thread of basically a history of people or commentators on Match TV and on other television programs who have these sexist remarks. Ilya, what do you think about that thread? I mean, it points out some pretty big names in media in Russian football who, and it's not even just accusing them, it's like straight up like, this is what they said.
Yeah, it was actually like a log of the comment show on YouTube. Comment show is like a YouTube channel run by football commentators from Match TV and I think Channel 1. Mm-hmm. So they were discussing especially Kobelev's comments, and I mean, they look like they tried to like defend women, but for me it looked even worse because what they said really strange things, like Konstantin Ganich, for example. He said, well, if a female reporter wants to ask you a question about tactics, she got to consult first with a male reporter. Then for example, they discussed, like, can women actually be football commentators, and they all agreed that they can't because they didn't have any arguments. Also, Denis Kazansky had one. He said something like, how many female artists do you remember? And he just named one, and he said, and that's it, and maybe that's why. That was his argument. Also, Nobel Aristamian, he was talking about that. He said that female journalists can actually be good sideline reporters because they look nice, and it's really a pleasure to look at them.
Jesus Christ.
So things like that, and I think they don't even understand that's really sexist too. And so yeah,
that's really just emblematic of the issue. They are themselves being sexist in what they're saying, and they're basically trying to mansplain everything about what's going on. They're saying, oh yes, this, what you said was wrong, but they can also do this right, and absolutely mansplaining the hell out of it, because every single thing that they're also trying to defend, that they're chastising him for and defend her with, and women in football with, is in itself just as sexist. That's what they don't understand. It's just, they're basically dinosaurs. David, what do you think about it? Do you want to jump in for a quick second?
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking, obviously all these guys work on the TV. Isn't like their boss Maria Koanya? Is she like one of the head honchos at the channel? I can't remember if that's her role or if she's just another presenter. But like, that seems weird for them to, if I'm right in thinking that she's the boss. It'd be weird for them to be saying those things. Ilya can perhaps answer my query there.
Well, I'm not sure if she's like Tina Kandelaki is.
Oh yeah, that's Tina Kandelaki.
And they have a lot of female bosses actually on the TV channel. And I also can't understand that every time before the game they come to the press box, and usually it's like 50% of journalists here are female, or even more. Sometimes it's in majority.
Yeah, like a lot of the people, like obviously we try and follow as many sports journalists on Twitter as possible, and a lot of the ones who work for Championat Sport, Sport 24 are female. You know, you got Alina Matinyan, Polina Klimova, Margarita Yakupova, just three off the top of my head, who I know like work for some of the most prominent websites around. And I actually recall also reading recently that there's a Russian female, I think she was a linesman rather than a ref, and they were there was an article about that she could potentially be a linesman or a lineswoman in the Premier League next season. And I was like, so that's cool. And I don't think I dare read the comments, but I certainly did read an article about it. But that'd be good. It'd be interesting to see if that would actually happen or not, and what the reception would be.
Well, we ourselves have been trying to cover women's football more in Russia because it's on the up. It's definitely on the up. It's getting better year in, year out. There's more and more teams getting women's football teams and really taking it seriously and really realizing that this is an opportunity for them, for football club, a business perspective, to tap into a completely untapped, a largely untapped audience. And it's great to see it on the rise. But we've had Tom Weber, who's done quite a few articles on the Superliga, really good analysis of the Superliga, and there's been quite a few times where we've had comments in the website that have marked as spam and deleted because it's disgusting, and direct messages where it's like, why are you covering this? What's the point in covering this? This is Russian football news, not women's Russian football news. Well, it's Russian football. It doesn't matter about gender, and that's what these guys need to understand. They're saying they can't be commentators. Yeah, well, maybe one of them could be better than all of them, and they're just sitting there worried about their jobs. Ilya, what do you think?
Yeah, the funny thing is that there is actually a female football commentator on Telesport. She's covering Belgian football, I think. Unfortunately, I don't watch Belgian football, but I know that fact. And maybe, I don't know, I was thinking about it a lot because, of course, Russia can be considered as conservative country, and like a lot changed for the better in the recent years, but still there are a lot of like guys who are like completely sexist in different areas. But for me, like journalism was always one of the most progressive fields because I know I have a lot of like colleagues in like journalism, and like all of them are pro-feminist. They're not racist at all, they're not sexist at all, and I never heard such comments from them. But I'm talking about all journalists besides sports journalists, because if you go to the sports media in Russia, even the guys who are like of our age, under 30 or like under 40, who can't be called boomers, all like all these guys also have, I've seen so many times such comments which also very sexist, and like I really can't understand, maybe because so many reporters are football fans, and this like in football this is just a common thing, unfortunately, for football. And I just hope that there will be changes for the better, because like on Telesport, I know the guys, football commentators for Telesport, they're really nice, and maybe that's just a thing for big media like Match TV, like Sports.ru, and people from small media are completely different, and I hope that things will change for the better.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is largely an issue with the old forms of media, and that's across the world. These views are held across the world. I mean, you look at cricket. Just the other day on Twitter, there was a viral incident of a woman playing, an English woman playing cricket and going to the wrong side of the stumps. It was a pretty like big cock up from her, and it was used to be like, oh look, women's cricket, haha. Like, well, you can take so many one single mistakes out of context from either gender's football and say, like, oh look, terrible football. I mean, you can take one cock up from the English Premier League, what's considered the greatest league in the world, is certainly the highest watched, and say, well, this is all of English men's football. It's just rank disgusting, and that's, I mean, this is in cricket as well, which is like the most English of English sports. It was invented like 600 years ago in Kent by some like middle class white people, It's all over the world and it's all over football, and it's not good enough. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it's still very prevalent. Every time Alex Scott is on the TV, I know. I mean, I have Sky, but I know when she's a pundit on TV because she trends because there's a load of gammon spouting off about it on social media. I mean, let's be honest. Whenever I've seen Alex Scott doing hosting, she does a really good job. And some of the pundits we have on the UK TV are like the fact that Sky Sports News had like Paul Merson and all that lot in, and they could barely pronounce half the players they were talking about. Like,
still give Souness airtime.
yeah, I mean, it's it's not something that even is out of this country. So, and I mean, even if you went back maybe 10 years, there would have been no one in Alex Scott's position who was female. There's always been female presenters, like I remember on Football Focus. They always had female reporters, like Ailey Doyle has been there for ages, I remember.
Yeah.
But it's becoming more prevalent now in the UK, and although there's it's meeting resistance from certain sectors, so you'd expect the rise in Russia to be just as if not more so.
It's great to see more and more women commenting and working on men's games and vice versa. I mean, the Chelsea's manager, Emma Hayes, I believe she's called, who's highly successful, like one of the most successful coaches in football, regardless of gender or country, was actually linked with the Wimbledon job in League One of late. It's showing that we're making progress on this issue, and we need to bring this up, and we need to help not just educate, but just pass on this message and condemn comments like, I mean, look at Nobel's comment in the show when he said, "I like this format; it's perfect. A girl, roughly speaking, should be attractive so that you can watch the television. And look, there's the beautiful girl." And then who comments on the football? Let the man. It's just absolutely rank disgusting, and there's no room for it in this society anymore. Ilya?
Yeah, I completely agree. And coming back to what Ganich said, that a female reporter should consult with the male guy before asking like something. The fact is that he actually, I know about 2 cases when he actually consulted with the women before his matches. Like once he asked about coronavirus measures in Bundesliga, and also during Valencia game, he used a part of an article about Valencia, also written by a female journalist. But I mean, he doesn't really realize that he used their knowledge, and I don't know how he can't really understand that. And I like the thing that Vadim Lukovsky said on his Telegram channel, that maybe it's true that there are like less women who are like interested in football right now, but those who are interested, they really have a deeper knowledge than male journalists, because like if they watch football, they don't watch because like their friends tell them, "Oh, don't you want to watch football?" They're really interested in the team, they're really interested in the players, and maybe that's why, for example, on Russian Twitter we have a lot of like channels, a lot of female journalists who are reporting about this team, about some minor leagues, and maybe like the majority of them are female. Maybe that's why I completely agree with his opinion. I just hope that, yeah, in coming years, will change for the better.
Yeah, it's. I guess we've all mentioned it. It's good that this sort of prehistoric thinking's being slowly phased out of football everywhere, and that's not just in these views aren't just in Russia. It's elsewhere. Progressive views, and as more progressive and more liberal generations grow up, these will be filtered out. And absolute full credit to Maria Ozil for her brilliant response. But we're gonna have to finish the podcast now because we are running a little bit over time. And we will unfortunately end on a little bit of a sour note and some sad news. Is this weekend, I want to speak on behalf of all at RFN, send our condolences to the family of Yuri Rozanov, a legend of commentating in Russia. He sadly passed away at the age of just 59 after a long battle with cancer. And he's probably most famous for, outside of Russia anyway, for his ecstatic commentary of Rubin's 2-1 defeat of Barcelona at the Camp Nou. For anybody who may not have heard, here's a little short excerpt of the excellent commentary when Gogniev scored.
Вот пошел Боян. Это не очень пошел Домингес. Поддерживает Гогнев его. Только с пасом теперь не обмануться. Отличная передача. Гогнев 1-1. Забей! Забил! Забил Гогнев 2-1. Вопросов нет никаких. Игроки Барса смотрят на бокового арбитра, а вдруг нет, ребят. Там 1,5 метра еще было. Ах, Домингес. Как же ты выненчил этот пас-то, а? Как ты его берег, нес буквально. Вот как на руках кто-то несут, он нес его в ногах.
So rest in peace, Yuri Albertovich. And then another bit of sad news was that Spartak's legendary manager, Oleg Romantsev, suffered a heart attack on Tuesday, and he was 67 at the time. Now, his condition is assessed as moderate. Doctors have diagnosed him with an acute coronary syndrome, and he's been taken out of the ICU, the intensive care unit. So we wish him all the best in his recovery, and he can stay strong. So, Ilya, I'm sure that most of our listeners probably already follow you in your memes on Twitter, but can you remind everyone where to find yourself online? And I believe you'll be covering the Dinamo game for RFN this weekend as well.
Yeah, first of all, if you have Clubhouse, I'll go live from the stadium during Dinamo Tambov. So if you want to listen to my comments instead of watching this horrible game, join me. Yeah, and my Twitter is Loko Sokol. It's easy to find. It's like Loko as in locomotive and Sokol as in my last name, Sokolov.
This has been the RFN podcast. Goodbye for now.
Идет футбольный матч, летит над полем мяч. Веди его, беги, точнее его ударь. Но мяч берет с ноги решительный вратарь. Не напрасно футбольное поле самых ловких и смелых влечет. Здесь нужны тренировка и воля, быстрота, увлечение, расчет.